welcome to Reads, Spider-Man Crawl Space Edition. Checking us out at the SpidermanCrawlspace.com. Well, everybody, I'm here, of course, to review the most issue, Part 8 of the 8 Deaths of Spider-Man. And despite being Part 8, it is actually not over yet, too, of course, by Justina Ireland and Andrea Broccardo, as I go on to hear about what is the biggest chapter here before we get to the big conclusion, supposedly. So, how did this issue handle after everything's said? Well, let's kind of get to the... first of all, I think the biggest interesting character about has been Cyra of the twins. I like the fact that despite her powers about seeing the inevitability of everybody's death, even though those can change as the old saying. So I was like, I could plan this tomorrow, but I could step out in the street and die one before that even happens, despite how I have plans. There's been a lot of very interesting on this character. I've actually liked the character development of Cyra here. I do think Ireland as well as Kelly Andros have done a really good job about actually getting a little bit more under the front, even with the brother Cyrax of her twin brother and how he was the complete opposite. I did like how that worked, and her character's come so far, especially as Peter says, why aren't you celebrating? And she's like, there's something more to Earth. There's not just about pleasing my father. There's not more things. It's not about seeing how people end. There's actually more to this, and I actually want to explore that. It's really nice characterization. I wish we got more commonly in Spider-Man. I actually do like, too, as we actually get a lot going on here with things here. We actually have a nice little friendship between Spider-Man and the X-Men, even though this is Cyclops' team. I like the fact we don't have any misunderstanding. They actually kind of get in, try to work with each other, and it's nice, refreshing, instead of just being like, oh, the X-Men here. It's more of like, hey, I showed up because of this. That makes sense. And where have you been, Spider-Man? Long story, but let's try to stop this because this is going to really be a destructive thing. Okay, let's go. I like the fact that they actually established that is, and Ireland actually remembers that, especially with the newer members like Kid Omega and Temper. And I also like the fact we actually figure out what's going on with the Blight, that it's affected them, but what it was meant to do. Basically, how it is it basically poisons worlds and basically feels off that chaos and destructions. People out of anger coming out, people's resentment towards it, and it actually is really kind of cool how it does, especially as it affects and everything else. That the fact that the Scions are actually kind of immune to the actual effects of it unless they're directly infected by the Blight. And I do like that explaining exactly what it is and why this has been so bad for the Earth. It feels like it comes a little late, but it makes plenty of sense too. And I do like the fact that they kind of jump in to work on that. But at the same time, this is a very thin plot. Something we were seeing hugely right now, especially at this point, is Peter had only used 5 of the reeds to get himself to of Ragador to actually keep himself going good and everything. And as a result, it just has this problem because he uses it to bring back, like I said, his last 4 he has to get back Aunt May, Randy, Shay, and one of the strangers that are outside the feast fence. And the fact is he can no longer use these and everything. And that was something nobody was understanding why it was, but also some people saw it coming around, especially what snaps Peter out of it. The fact that they died now. They weren't dying in this even more grim thing years from now or months from now, like Randy getting trampled from a protest going wrong, Aunt May dying from a pandemic in a few years, the fact that Shay, after living a good 20, 30 years, gets hit by a drunk driver. And the fact is that's what snaps them out of it. They weren't supposed to die now. They weren't supposed to die now. That's what really makes it just make no sense, especially when Cyra told him that the future wasn't set, but it was done for pain, and that's what broke him. Understand the millions of people, but despite all those millions of people he saw death, yes, we all eventually die. The question is what we do in our life is what snaps him out of this, which kind of throws up. Another thing is, of course, the big thing that everybody's been saying since issue 1 is why is Cyterrak just sitting there? Even Cyra and Peter are kind of like, why is he just sitting there on the throne looking absent and not doing? She said stuff like, why did he let his other kids get killed by his own son? Why is he just sitting there doing nothing? And also the fact that when we finally, that everybody's like, this doesn't make sense for him. Like, why is he just not doing anything? And we called it months ago. We still don't get an explanation. I mean, we are going to get next issue because the way this issue ends, I understand that. Another thing is when we actually see the full set of the Bright, he looks surprisingly like 2 other deities that of course were exemplars too, including Akon and Kraken the jailer and everything else. If you notice it too, they do look very, very similar. And by the way, if anybody's wondering too, Icon was made back in '81 by Gene Colan and Roger Stern as a mystical little Aries things doing their runs on that. And of course, Kraken was, of course, introduced in the original Eighth Day storyline by Kurt Busiek, Roger Stern, and Sean Ryan, Hero of the Creation. We didn't see Kraken until just recently with the Blood Hunt storyline a couple years ago. So, but if you look at it, it's not original. One thing that was really big with the art styles of all this was how Ed McGuinness says he was really trying to make the science be more classic Jack Kirby and try to get more of the designs like with the Exemplar. And this just feels like he put the two together and said, "Here you go," and then handed it off to Andrea Broccardo and said, "Good luck with it." And also the ending, we saw coming a mile away that Peter was going to die. He used up all his reeds. He had no safeguard. Calyx comes up and kills him, and basically is. And of course, the issue just ends with like, "Well, now what can we do? What can we do now? We can't do this now. What will we do with the world? Our world and your world is now screwed." So it's the bag dramatic ending. It's an ending we saw coming and everything else. And we knew this was going to happen after Peter gave up all the reeds to save Aunt May and everybody else. Just once again, he gives up all the things on that to it. Why it still kind of gets to how Peter sacrifices himself for the better of others too. We saw this plot coming. It's part of the thing. And with all that said, I mean, I know we still got two issues with this, but we're all kind of ready for this storyline to end. This gets a D from me. It was great artwork and a few other things, but it's kind of painful. It's just like I said, this does feel like an X-Men story. This is a storyline that could have been an X-Men guest starring Doctor Strange or Spider-Man or so forth, and it would at least made more sense, especially how it was revealed Juggernaut's immune to the Blight because of him being an exemplar of Cyterrak, and just basically that Kylix was actually corrupted because he had direct assault with the Blight and what it did. But it just there's too many things here. We saw the endings coming from a mile away, and we know we're getting Spider Knots in before the storyline's all over too. So I'm ready for the storyline to be over. It started out fun. It's got some great artwork. It did something, but the fact that Cyra is the best thing to come out of this storyline, with everything else we either saw coming a mile away, or just how bad the thin the plot was, it just doesn't get it for me. So a D. And with that, everybody, I hope to try anything the next time too. I'm currently getting over the flu right now, so that's why I don't do too much my energetic pieces with my reviews here. So I hope everybody stays warm right now, enjoying the time of February here. And I'll be back next time to, of course, review our next issues of Ultimate Spider-Man and, of course, Amazing Spider-Man. So always check us out at the SpiderManCrawlspace.com for all your latest information, news, and, of course, podcasts. And think about liking and subscribing to this channel for more latest news, as well as joining our Patreon. On that note, everybody, I will see everybody